Welcome to This Explainer. We're diving into something today that affects every single one of us, but it's happening almost entirely out of sight. It's the profound and honestly deeply unsettling transformation of our global food system. We walk through grocery aisles packed with what looks like endless abundance, but behind all that bright packaging is a heavily engineered reality. Today, we're going to investigate exactly how modern agriculture shifted away from traditional farming and was captured by a tightly controlled corporate system. So let's start by shattering a very comforting illusion. We all like to imagine that the food on our plates is just the pure result of natural cycles: sun, rain, soil, and a farmer's hard work. But the truth? The very DNA of the food we eat is now largely governed by corporate law. And to really grasp how we got here, we have to rewind and look at how humans have historically interacted with nature. Section 1. The Illusion of Nature. We're going to look at the massive disconnect between historical agriculture and the hyper-processed reality of what's actually sitting on supermarket shelves today. Take the modern carrot, for example. The familiar orange vegetable you buy today didn't always look like that. The original ancestors of carrots, which grew in Persia and Asia Minor, were thin, bitter, and usually white or purple. Humans have been altering crops through selective breeding for thousands of years, carefully choosing traits for better taste, higher yield, and survival. So altering food isn't exactly new. But here's the catch. Traditional breeding took immense patience. It happened slowly over millennia. Our modern era, however, has drastically accelerated that timeline. In the 1970s, the agricultural industry pivoted to recombinant DNA genetic engineering. And today, we're using targeted CRISPR genome editing. We aren't just selecting traits anymore. We are fundamentally rewriting the microscopic code of our food supply in a lab. And the disconnect we face as consumers is just staggering. Take the FDA's definition of natural flavors. It's incredibly vague. It essentially just means the flavor was derived from a plant or animal at some point. This loophole allows ultra-processed foods that often hide synthetic additives or gut-disrupting chemicals like polysorbate 80, to legally masquerade as wholesome natural nourishment. Moving on to Section 2, from chemicals to crops. Let's look at the real inciting incident for the systemic takeover: the Green Revolution, and the rather terrifying pivot of industrial chemical companies into the farming sector. You literally cannot understand modern farming without looking at Monsanto. Think about this. Here's a company that spent nearly a century manufacturing highly dangerous chemicals. They produced artificial saccharin, toxic DDT pesticides, the devastating Agent Orange defoliant used in Vietnam, and industrial PCBs. And then, abruptly in the 1990s, this massive chemical company decided to genetically modify and patent the seeds that grow our food. The crucial takeaway here is that an industrial, chemical mindset was suddenly applied to living organisms. Just look at the modern broiler chicken. Scientists analyzing it actually categorize it as a novel morphotype. They call it an unprecedented human reconfiguration of the Earth's biosphere. The entire system has been artificially rewired for rapid, high-volume yield, prioritizing corporate efficiency completely over biological integrity. Let's move to Section 3, patenting the seed. Because next, we have to uncover the legal framework that made this biological monopoly globally enforceable. How exactly does a corporation gain legal ownership over a living seed? Well, in 1994, the World Trade Organization was established, bringing with it the TRIPS Agreement. Under Article 27.3b, member countries were globally mandated to allow enforceable patents on plant cells, seeds, and DNA sequences. To put that simply, under the guise of international trade, chemical companies were legally allowed to patent life. It made it a literal violation of international law for farmers to freely save or use these genetic sequences. And this legal precedent created an incredibly devastating cyclical trap for farmers, especially with products like Roundup Ready crops. Here's how the trap works. A farmer must buy the company's patented genetically modified seed. Then they have to buy that exact same company's specific toxic herbicide just to make the seed grow. And the kicker? When it's time to harvest, the farmer is strictly forbidden from saving any seeds for the next season. They are legally forced to buy the entire package all over again, year after year. Section 4. Farmer versus the corporation. To truly grasp the human cost of these patents, we have to look closely at what happens when ordinary people get caught in this aggressive legal web. We have to ask a terrifying but entirely practical legal question. What happens to a traditional farmer when patented genetic material naturally blows onto their private property from a neighboring farm?
The tragic story of Percy Schmeiser answers that exact question. Percy was a Canadian farmer who practiced the ancient tradition of saving his own seeds, but Monsanto secretly sampled his crops, found traces of their patented genetics, and sued him for $100,000. Percy argued that the seeds blew into his field by natural wind cross-pollination, but the courts completely ignored that defense. Monsanto won. They financially ruined him, and that ruling set a chilling global precedent, leading to 144 similar lawsuits against small farmers between 1997 and 2010. Section 5. The Global Food Monopoly. Now, we're going to zoom out and look at the horrifying scale of this engineered oligopoly. This isn't just about one company anymore. Today, any illusion of choice in the marketplace shatters when you actually look at the numbers. Just 4 megacorporations control 60% of all agricultural seeds worldwide. 4. And just 4 corporations control 76% of all agricultural chemicals. The raw power over human sustenance has been concentrated into a dangerously small number of hands. And the cost of this monopoly is quite literally measured in human lives. 200,000. That staggering number represents the estimated number of Indian farmers who have been driven to suicide. They were trapped in insurmountable, crushing debt, a debt directly caused by a forced reliance on these expensive, proprietary GMO seeds and the chemical pesticides that ultimately failed to deliver the promised yields. It's a devastating reality. This control even extends to something called biopiracy, where companies legally patent ancient indigenous resources. We're talking about a Japanese firm patenting Thailand's traditional ulcer cure, or U.S. firms patenting Mexico's historic yellow bean. And while these companies own the actual DNA, private giants like Cargill, a $77 billion entity, silently control the global ports and shipping, meaning our entire food supply chain is monopolized from the microscopic DNA sequence all the way to the cargo ship. And this system is actively degrading the physical quality of our food, replacing diverse traditional farming with corporate high-yield hybrid monocultures has wiped out hundreds of historical crop varieties over the last 80 years. Studies prove this genetic dilution means the modern uniform crops we eat today have significantly lower mineral and nutrient densities than the historic varieties our ancestors thrived on. Which brings us to our final part, Section 6, Reclaiming Our Independence. Because despite this intense and unsettling reality, the story does not have to end here. There are practical steps we can take to resist this. I want you to think about the modern banana, or the seedless watermelon. These sterile, seedless fruits filling our grocery aisles, they serve as a chilling physical metaphor for our absolute loss of reproductive independence in agriculture. Because when the food we eat can no longer reproduce itself, humanity becomes completely reliant on a corporate supply chain for its very survival. Reclaiming our independence requires intentional action. We have to actively seek out historical, heirloom crop varieties that still retain your deep nutritional profiles. We need to revive the outlawed tradition of saving seeds. And by actively supporting local, independent agriculture and growing our own food, we can consciously reject this forced reliance on ultra-processed corporate formulations. So, I'll leave you with this final, provocative thought to investigate further in your own life. If every bite of food we take is increasingly shaped by international patents, chemical monopolies, and genetic dilution, how will you choose to reclaim control over your own survival tomorrow? Thanks for joining me for this explainer. Look closely at your food, ask the hard questions, and stay curious.